this gift would have an important role.
Greetings, YouTube. I'm Evening, and I'm here to talk about games you probably never heard about. Today, I want to ask and answer one simple question. Should you play the Mark of Kri? Let's begin with, what even is Mark of Kri? An exclusive of PlayStation 2, the game was released in 2002 by a studio which nowadays has been cursed to only make MLB The Show games. After the making of Mark of Kri, a lot of the people that worked on the game left the studio for a new one, where, in 2005, they made a sequel to the game called Rise of the Kasai, and then also kinda just disappeared. So what is Mark of Kri about? You are Rao, a warrior tasked with protecting the Mark of Kri. The 6 pieces that, once put together, reveal a great spell of darkness and destruction, but it has been so long since the whole spell thing happened that the world just kinda forgot about it. So now, for the most part, Rao just protects the village he's in, doing some simple bandit exterminations. That is until someone of great evil decides to begin collecting the pieces of the spell in order to sow destruction. Oh, did I mention that the Mark of Kri can only be found on people's bodies? So this does mean that some people are getting skinned. Lovely. Without any dilly-dallying, let's get to the main selling point of the game, the visuals. What a beauty this game is. It truly feels like I'm playing a long-lost Disney movie tie-in game. The character design has that fun, over-exaggeration of human body proportions, which makes everything so appealing, and the most entertaining part is, when these Disney characters go and break the neck of another dude, or impale a dude with a gimp attire to the floor, the whiplash you get when these characters commit violent atrocities never gets old. The game isn't that long, took me around 7 hours, but in all the time, the visuals never get dull. Every level has a different aesthetic that is fun to explore. Every level features at least one enemy that looks different that you're always eager to kill. The game always feels visually refreshing and appealing. Even the cutscenes are quite unique. They feature time lapses of some nicely hand-drawn art, which, while yes, might not be very informative visually, it is beautiful to look at. Game sounds fantastic. Every level has its own OST, and the game features adaptive music, meaning, depending on what you are doing, the music changes. It works perfectly. The music also isn't very in your face. It feels like it excellently helps you get immersed into the world. It never feels like the main player of any level, but both like the glue that connects all the level worlds together with the similar musical motifs, and also the butter that helps you glide through the level while being engrossed in the sounds of all the instruments. All the sound effects feel very meaty and powerful. When you hear the clink of metal as an enemy blocks your attack, it makes you understand just how strong Rao's blows are. Hearing the crunch of a neck as Rao stealthily grabs a man and breaks him is also always satisfying. Game has excellent audio design. I just wish the enemy footsteps were louder so you wouldn't need to depend on visual aid as much, but in the grand scheme of things, with how the levels are designed, it isn't that big of a problem. You might think, what a cool looking action game this is. A God of War with a Disney art style? Lies. You have been tricked, the same way I was. You see, I saw a single screenshot of this game, it looked interesting, I thought it was an action game, and that's it. But this isn't an action game, it's a stealth game. That's what it is. It even used stealth to appear to be an action game, but don't fall for it like I did. In the first couple levels, before we get truly introduced to stealth, it does play like your typical action game, except the combat has a bit of a quirk you may have already noticed. Floating phase buttons over enemies. This happens whenever you use the right stick of your controller to send out this beam of light, which ends up marking every enemy unlucky enough to get caught in it. What does this mean, you might ask? You see, whichever button you press corresponds to whichever enemy will be attacked. On paper, this makes a great system, something that visually makes Rao behave like Batman in the Arkham games, except here you don't rely on parries, everything is in your control. Except here's the catch. I suck at combat, well, that's one thing. The other more important thing is that you can only do weapon combos when only a single enemy is marked, because the other 2 phase buttons are needed to execute the aforementioned combos. So, whenever you are fighting a group of enemies, you come to a decision. Do you want to have more control of the battlefield, have easier maneuverability in battle, or sacrifice it all so a single enemy gets pummeled instantly by your combos? But this doesn't matter as much as the game, at its core, is more of a Polynesian Tenchu rather than a God of War. And here's the shocker. Seeing with how betrayed I felt when I understood this was a sneaking around game, the stealth is very good. The way stealth kills work, just like in combat, you mark an enemy, but this time, if they haven't seen you and you are unarmed, pressing the phase button will just take them out in the most gruesome of ways. If you have multiple enemies that are unaware of your presence, you can do a multi-takedown by following the button prompts on screen. There are also ledge grabs or jump downs that also take out any foe in your way. It's a great system that adds challenge to taking taking out multiple foes. It isn't just a single button press. And that isn't the only skill in your arsenal for dealing with enemies in a stealthy way. Your bird friend, Kuzo, can be sent out to perch on specific places. Once Kuzo is in place, at any time you can switch your view to see the world through the bird's eyes, giving you so much visual information, letting you plan your moves and follow the guards easier. Or you can also just use Kuzo for distraction. The last piece of equipment that helps your stealth is the bow. A weapon which, if aimed right, can one-shot any non-armored enemy. It's great for taking out sentries, bowmen, or other enemies to set up stealth kills easier. It does get kinda useless later on, as suddenly, almost everyone decides to bring a helmet. The kit is simple, but it works wonders in how one mechanic flows into another. When the game lets you be the ghost you are meant to be, Mark of Kri takes the spot of one of my favorite stealth experiences ever. Looking at you in particular, Mr. Waitaku level, my favorite level without any doubt. The problem is, rarely does the game just let you be the stealth god you were always meant to be, which is where my problem with the game rears its ugly combat crazed head. I think we can all agree that combat in a stealth game should be challenging, something you wouldn't want to do, to emphasize that this is your last resort. You have messed up if you need to fight, and you should be using stealth. Problem is, Mark of Kri makes you do combat just because. Many times doing a long stealth section just ends in you now having to fight a group of enemies that are impossible to stealth pass. Your reward for perfectly sneaking around is an all-out brawl, and it just doesn't feel good. Especially because combat with big groups turns into a slog. Particularly, it feels sluggish after the tight, tense experience of the stealth area. And that's not even mentioning how the last level just turns into combat level after combat arena, where stealth pretty much doesn't matter anymore, which is truly a shame. The levels are not only occupied by enemies, they also feature some items for Rao to find. Firstly, we have healing items that can regenerate either 25%, 50%, or full health. Then we got save scrolls, which you can only carry maximum of 4. They let you save at any point in the level. Then there's also a bundle of arrows, just a little way to replenish what you used up. And lastly, the best item you can find, the Rune of Power, which for the duration of the level increases your maximum vitality. These are a must as they make the combat that much easier. You can collect 4 per level, and ideally you should always try and find all 4, as health is something you really need. Now let us talk about extras. Every level in the game features a hidden tuku that, after collecting all of them on every level, grants you the ability to use any weapon on any level. Great for replayability if that's what you are into. The other, more interesting thing are the challenges. Every level has challenges Rao can try and do. They consist of things like performing specific stealth kills, getting combos, or executing very specific combat tricks, like hitting an enemy that's behind you while fighting the one that's in front. They are fun little things that do change how you approach every level, as you trying to achieve these can alter how you move through the level and such. Completing all the challenges unlocks an arena of that level. These feature either a time challenge, where you must kill a specific amount of enemies in a given time, or a body count challenge where you just have to kill enough dudes. Completing both of these unlocks a new costume for Rao and some art you can look at. Here's the problem. Story feels more like the glue that connects the game levels, puts them all in context and nothing more. You get a cutscene at the beginning of the level and at the end. Some environmental storytelling in the level itself, but for the most part, story and what happens during the level feel kinda separate. This can mostly be seen by the area in between levels, the inn, which is the only place where you can actually talk with people. Speaking of people, there aren't any characters really. They are just some people with arguably beautiful designs, and that's it. Even the main character isn't that much of a character. The most interesting person in the game is probably the villain, and he himself isn't that memorable either. While yes, the plot and the characters might be subpar, what stands out is the world. Specifically, the optional murals you can find that give you lore and feature the hand-drawn cutscenes. Everything in the world feels like a breath of fresh air, since the Polynesian culture and mythos that it's based upon is not a well of culture that is often touched upon. Everything that had to do with that part I adored. The way characters looked, how the world was designed, what clothes they wore, all of this felt like the world telling its story, trying to show how interesting it is. Sadly, once again, it doesn't feel like anything truly interesting was touched upon, and at the end of the day, the game did become a story of defeating the bad guy that summons the undead and nothing more. Even now, as I'm writing this a couple months after playing the game, I don't think there's a single element of the story, other than the skinning of people, that has stuck with me. What has stuck with me, however, is the overwhelming notion that I loved the feel of the world I inhabited as Rao, and that I want more of this. So, to answer the question, should you play Mark of Kri? If you go into the game knowing that this is an experience that favors stealth, where combat is a lot of times a little bit of a slog, I think it's a game that you can find a lot of enjoyment in. It features almost one-of-a-kind art style, with its violent, late 90s, early 2000s Disney style. It has an interesting enough story, with some very unique representations of the Polynesian culture. So yeah, if all of this seems up your alley, have a blast playing this beautiful game. Thanks for watching, greatly appreciated. Check out my other Should You Play videos, or check out my other channel, Evening Man, for longer, more in-depth videos on games you probably never heard about. See you next time. I've been Evening, and this has been Mark of Kri.